Gentlemen, good to see you both. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Lotfi, my question for you is that script to screen journey on a project really interests me. And I'm curious with this film, it's one thing to kind of get all the prep ready to go, but then you actually get there and you see everything, right? You see the production and everything. What was that like for you on the Carpenter's Son, so to speak? Like when you actually like got there on location?
Yeah, it was incredible. I think there was a lot of really hard work from a lot of different departments in trying to give us a world that reflected the story that everyone at that point really understood together, um, including Noah. I just think everyone was bringing their a shared understanding of this world that we were making. So, the whole thing isn't seamless. It's like, in trying to do a period story, it's incredibly difficult. But the whole approach to this was to make it kind of Spartan, and pared down in the setting. So that was a nice experience. And then also shooting in Greece, in some remote parts of Greece. We shot on the island of Crete and rural countryside of Athens, and I think that really helped us to kind of insulate in making the film.
Absolutely. Noah, good to see you again, man. And I wanted to kind of ask you because you've started to kind of really work in a lot of different genres, but specifically like stuff in like the horror movie genre, the thriller. I'm wondering from an acting storytelling perspective, what do you like the most about working on those type of stories, the ones that have that kind of scary factor, spook factor in that kind of world, so to speak?
Yeah, I think that it's a genre that's always interested me. I think when I was younger, I was terrified of them. I was always extremely invested in films and therefore extremely terrified by any convincingly scary thing. And I always found it like incredible how something on a TV could scare you like in a massive way. I was terrified by it. And so making those films although I would say that, this is definitely falls under the horror genre, but it's more eerie than that. It's not about the jump scares. It's not about but in this world, I think lives an incredibly truthful um mode of storytelling. I think with people on the edge of their seats, you get them invested in characters in a new way because they are completely connected. They're sort of waiting for something to happen, so they're listening. They're on high alert, so therefore I feel like in this genre you get people much more connected to the films, and I think that when it's done well, it can be really, really cool. Would make such great films. When it's done badly, not so much.
No, absolutely. And well, that's interesting you mentioned about the eeriness and everything. Like Lotfi, I'm wondering, like, I know, especially with a movie like scales of certain movies, you're just thinking about shot to shot from a director perspective. But are there ever any moments where you're thinking about the scale and the landscape of horror movies these days? Because everything's elevated, everything's heightened, right? And I'm wondering, do you think about that at all while you're in kind of production for a film like this, or is that something that happens a little bit in post production?
Yeah, of course. I thought about that a good deal, and it was a something that lent itself to every facet of it, like from performances and things we agreed on, and to the way it was shot. But at the same time, um, approaching it from a naturalistic, real kind of grounded way was always very important to me, especially given the subject of this story, So yeah, I wanted to check those boxes of the visceral parts of the film, but it was just as important, more important to do something that felt intimate.
Absolutely. And then last question before we wrap up, Noah. There's always going to be learning experiences on projects. I feel like, there's probably a lot of different things that were different for this project compared to the past. Is there anything on the top of your head with the Carpenter son that was a big learning experience or challenge from an acting storyteller perspective that you'll take to future projects?
Um, I mean, there were many. I think that for me, it was I think one big thing I will say is like the dialogue, is like the language, and I think Lotfi did an incredible job of tapping into that sort of it's incredibly poetic and like beautiful language that feels sort of another time. And think I'm more used to speaking in a very normal modern way, quite subtly, and so to come in and some of these lines were extremely heavy, and to deliver them with conviction and emotion and it not sound corny was a challenge of like tapping into a world where that the passion for the dialogue between these people was so high. So I think I learned a lot.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. So well said. And I can't wait for people to check out The Carpenter son in theaters. Lotfi, Noah, great to chat with you both. Thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning in to Popternative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popternative on YouTube.
This has been an Autograph Communications production.